Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today from around the world, it looks like, as we see you come in to the chat window. Welcome, everybody, to our house concert webinar with the talented Shannon Curtis.
Hello.
I'm here in Boston. Shannon is in Los Angeles. And we're so happy and excited to be here with all of you. Now you'll notice on the right side of your window there's a chat box. Feel free to type in there. We will be fielding questions after a little while, but we're gonna start out by listening to Shannon talk a bit about her background and how she got started as an artist and how that transitioned into the whole house concerts thing. So welcome, Shannon. How are you today?
I'm awesome. Good to see you.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for sharing what I hope to be is just an incredible amount of information about what you've done and what you've learned. And there are so many people that are so excited about learning from you. So thanks a lot.
My pleasure to be here.
So can you just tell us a little bit about how you got started as an artist and kind of what your background is and how you kind of discovered house concerts as a vehicle for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, very long story short, I was a biology major, had a realization that I was going to be a musician instead of a doctor, and so started a band after college, right? So I was in a band for several years. That's where I really learned a lot about, songwriting, recording, touring. We were pretty steadily touring on the college market, on the college scene. My band was. So I got a lot of experience, doing that. And then it came to a point that the band went separate ways, and I was writing music more for a solo project, and then continued just, the sort of traditional path, I guess, booking myself, in clubs and coffee houses and just, touring to try and build a fan base and that kind of thing. I was able to support a lot of those tours with college shows because they pay well, and so I was, kind of tour supporting myself by playing, colleges, but not really finding that the trajectory was like a slow build and not the big build that I was hoping for in terms of like bigger audiences in the coffee houses and clubs that I was playing around the country. And so fast forward then to the summer of 2011. And I got an email from a fan of mine in San Diego. And she emailed and she said, "Hey, you should come to San Diego. You haven't played here in a while. You could come and play in my living room." And I would invite my friends, and we could ask for donations for the show. And I was like, okay. It was out of the box, but, I live in LA, and San Diego's only like, 2.5 hour drive from my house. And I thought, well, I'll at least make gas money, right? Like, why not? Let's just go down. It might be fun. Let's give it a shot. So we drove down there, and by the way, whenever I say the word "we" in this conversation today, I'm referring to my co-conspirator and husband, Jamie Hill. We kind of are partners in crime, so whenever I say "we," that's who I'm talking about. But we drove down to San Diego, and we got to her house, and we hung out for a while, and then we started the concert time, and that hour-long concert was just such an eye-opening experience for me. I experienced just the ideal performance scenario for any performer. Whenever we get on stage, we want people to be listening to the music, connecting with what we're sharing. And when you're playing in a lot of clubs and coffee houses, there's so many distractions, and it's hard sometimes as a performer to stay positive when the coffee grinder's going off, in the back of the room, or the blender behind the bar is going nuts, or people, are chatting. But in this living room in San Diego, everybody was just totally dialed in. And I could feel this just wonderful exchange of energy between me and the audience. I mean, I could see them tearing up at, more emotional moments during the show. We were laughing together at the lighter moments. It was just this really wonderful, connective community event, and it was awesome. So the performance part was just like, this is why I got into doing music. This experience is it. And so that was really cool. And then on top of that, when we went to count out the donations in the donation vase at the end of the night, we made way more than gas money. So the light bulb went on. I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is an actual option for doing, more shows. So what happened next was this. We had planned, I just described sort of my frustration with seeing audiences build in cities that I was touring in. And so to sort of combat that, or just get up against that, we had planned to do 5 West Coast cities once a month for 5 months in a row. Really just hit them hard to try and build a fan base in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. Those were the 5 cities we were going to hit once a month, and just really try to build the fan base. Incubate those 5 months. We scheduled most of those shows on the weekends to try to maximize turnout, which meant we had all this time in between the shows where we were potentially going to be away from home on tour, but sitting idle, not playing shows. And anyone who knows about touring knows you don't want to be not playing shows while you're on tour. If you're not playing, you're paying, they say. So we wanted to be able to stay busy. So I thought, why don't we experiment with filling in some of these open dates with house concerts on this 5-month stretch? And so I reached out to people in the areas where we were going, people that I knew on Facebook, people who were on my mailing list, and say, hey, we're going to be, in your area for a couple days. Who's interested in hosting a house concert? Here's how it would look. You would need a space to gather and a minimum number of 20 people to come, to your house for this donation-based concert. So it wouldn't cost you anything up front to do it. What do you think? Well, we got responses, and we started doing these house concerts as filler dates on my club tours. And at the end of the 5 months, on every single measure, from the enjoyment we were having at the shows, from the performance experience, from the names we were getting on the mailing list, to the merch we were selling, to the money we were making, on every measure, the house concerts outperformed the club shows. Wow. And so this was the big light bulb moment, and I think it was Jamie who said it on the way down on one of those long drives down I-5 through Oregon, coming back to California. He's like, hey, what if we did a whole tour of just house concerts? And it sounds crazy because this is not how I thought you were supposed to do music or do touring, but we saw in evidence that it was working, so it seemed like it was worth a try. And so I put the word out in early 2012 to my mailing list, to my Facebook, to my Twitter. Guys, I have this crazy idea. I want to do a tour made up only of house concerts. If I can get enough hosts in your region of the country, I will come. Who would like to host a show? We ended up getting more response that year than we could even accommodate in that first summer house concert tour that we did in 2012. We ended up doing 35 shows in the western half of the United States, and it blew away every expectation that we had set for the tour. It was more fun than we expected it would be. We made more money, signed up so many people on the mailing list. It was a wonderful experience. And since then, we've now done 3 total summer house concert tours, and each year we see those benchmarks rising. So that's how I got started.
That's incredible. I've heard, not this story, but I've heard stories before from people that are out on the road, or people that are engaged in their career, that learning as you go, deciding to kind of take a right turn or a left turn based on what you're seeing, what you're learning as you go, is very, very important. On the other hand, I know a lot of people who have this dream of wanting to go in one direction, and they grind and grind and grind away, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I think it's just really a breath of fresh air, and very, very smart that you're able to react to what you're seeing, and that you're measuring kind of what's happening out there in the market, because this is a business after all, right? We're trying to make money here, we're trying to pay the bills, and being able to measure what happens, I think, is really great.
Yeah.
So Shannon, I got Chelsea, who is on this chat, who works with me, has helped put together a really pretty long list of questions. I hope we can get through a lot of them, and I know that there are going to be questions from everyone in the audience. So I'm going to start, and folks, if you have questions, you can queue them up, and I'll let you know when the right time is to start typing them into the chat. So I want to start with kind of you differentiate between a house concert and a house party. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, house party is like a bad word in our vocabulary. Yes, there's a big difference. House party, is a party. It's a gathering. It's, where music is probably an ancillary, thing to the hanging out and the talking and the consuming beverages and things like that. A house concert, when you use that term, it focuses the event, and that's really kind of like, if I can come back to this over and over today as we're talking, that the central idea is that you're creating at a house concert, creating an experience for people that when you dial in all of the specifics, the details that we've learned over 3.5 years of doing this, that if you can deliver a really great experience, you're going to see that reflected in your bottom line at the end of the night, donations and merch sales, and in your, drawing new people into your community. But the idea about a house concert, it's a concert. It's not like we're all hanging out and drinking and eating food and there's music happening in the corner. We've all had that experience. That's not what we're after. What we want to create is a special event. So we set it up like a house concert. People are seated during the music time, focused on the event. We work really hard with our hosts to make sure that they are leading that, so that they're setting an example. And there are a lot of little things that we do that encourage everybody to get on board with the idea that, oh, now we're having a concert. Now it's not appropriate for me to be talking to this person or getting up and refilling my drink. It's a concert. You wouldn't go to the LA Opera and chat with the person next to you. It's a concert. So that's the vibe that we're trying to create. So we don't even use the word house party. I will correct anybody who says, oh, hey, come to a house party. Nope, sorry. Won't do a house party, but I'll do a house concert.
Okay, I think that's an important thing. So, you're creating an environment where people are able to listen, you're able to deliver your performance in a controlled environment. So in some ways, it can be better than a club because you've got your interaction with the host. So, I think there are a couple things that I'd like to know more about.
Yeah.
And obviously having communication tools and social media are a big part of everyone's success these days. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. And I look at the fan side of how do you fill the room, but I also look at the host side. How do you find hosts for your house concerts? How do you go about identifying a good host?
Right. So, when I first, in the story I told about when we first started doing this, I just put the word out to my community, my mailing list of people that I'd gathered over the years from other touring, Facebook connections, Twitter, that kind of thing. And so I would just encourage people to start with what they have, start with the community that they have already built around them. Especially if you're talking about this as this cool thing that you're going to be doing with somebody, that you're going to be partnering with them to put on a cool event at their house. It's this exclusive thing that I think people are really interested in, and it's different. We are, we're told all the time what to wear, what to drink, what to eat, how to be from this top-down, media that we consume. A house concert is so different. I think people are craving these kind of unique experiences, and so you might be, if you're able to describe what kind of, special thing that you want to create with them, I think that you'll get people to join you in hosting these events. The other thing too is it's really important that you can let them know that it doesn't have to cost them any money to do it, and it doesn't have to cost them a dime if they have a space to gather and they can tell you. And in our case, we always tell them that we want a minimum number of 20 people, 20 adults to come to the show, and because we do them on a donation basis, it doesn't have to cost the host anything. I bring a small PA that we use for all the shows. Although that said, the very first several house concerts we did without a PA. I just sang into the room, into the living room where where I was performing. So that's a possibility as well. But in terms of like food and drinks, a lot of our hosts do it like potluck style. They invite their friends to come and say, hey, bring a dish to share and a 6-pack, and we'll have a good time. So it really doesn't have to cost anything. So I think you're going to attract more hosts if they know that they don't have to have deep pockets to host this exclusive special concert at their house. Pretty much anyone can do it. So so that's one thing to make sure that you're talking about when you're looking for hosts. And I think that you mentioned something a minute ago that I wanted to kind of circle back to, like how do you find hosts? Well, if you don't have a mailing list or a large following on Facebook or Twitter, I recommend starting with people that you know. I mean, friends and family. I've done 2 house concerts at my mom's house, 3 at my dad's, a couple in my aunt's backyard. I think that sometimes, you mentioned earlier, Dave, how you got to evaluate what's working in your career, and it may not go the way that you think it's going to go, right? I think a lot of us sometimes have, as artists, a certain amount of, I don't know if it's pride or embarrassment that we don't want to perform. We don't want to ask, our friends and family to support us. I'm not going to do a house concert at my mom's house. How embarrassing would that be? Well, the bottom line is that these are the people that actually support you. And I think that as you're developing your community, that's a really great place to start. Because one of the things that we've discovered is that that in terms of finding hosts for house concerts, they tend to be kind of viral in that, like, nearly every night that I do a house concert, I get 1 or 2 people who come up to me afterwards and say, this was really cool. I've never been to anything like this before. You were fantastic. I'd like to have you come and do this at my house for my unique group of friends and family. And so you can see that your community sort of grows in a viral sort of way. And so start with what you have. Even if it's small, I think that you will see it grow and you will see that momentum build over time.
Cool.
I hope that answered your question.
That does answer the question. So I think I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. Do you rely on the host to fill the room or the majority of the room, or is that on your shoulders as well? How does that work?
The host is entirely responsible for filling the room. I haven't done an ounce of show promotion in 3 years because we've been doing exclusively house concerts. And so yes, it is entirely incumbent upon them. So I'll book a house concert with somebody if they have a space to gather and they can tell me they'll have a minimum number of 20 adults present at the show. So they know that that's what's important to make the event a success. And some people who are like, oh, I don't know if I could get 20 people there. Well, I often suggest that they do a co-hosting situation, maybe rope in another friend, and then you've got 2 circles of, friends and family on which to draw to make that critical mass, of 20 people. But no, I don't do any promotion. Occasionally there'll be somebody in a city that is a fan of my music who will reach out to me and say, oh, I see that you're playing a house concert in my town. Can I come? In that case, I will make an introduction to the host. But I don't invite the public to come to the host's house. I feel like that's a bit of a barrier that I'm not willing to really ask the host to do. And also, it means more when the host has done the inviting of the people. I think what it does is it's not like you're playing for a group of strangers. What you're playing for is a group of people that your host has invited. They've already been given an endorsement of you and your music by the host. And so that's I think a key element. It's not people walking into a place like not knowing what they're going to get, what kind of experience they're going to have. They're people walking in who've had an invitation by this host who said, you need to be at this event. This is going to be really cool. Here's why. And so you already kind of like start with a leg up before you even play your first note. Sure.
So I think that this is an important thing for everybody to note here, is that there have been questions in the chat about how do you qualify people that are coming to the event. So the host is qualifying the people, and the host is inviting them, and that sets up a relationship and a certain expectation that the doesn't fall completely on the artist's shoulders. So you're sharing the risk and the responsibility with the host, and I think that that is really smart. I mean, there are people that are doing house concerts where they're driving their followers and their Facebook friends to an event, and sometimes they get pretty big.
Sure.
But your model is a much more intimate way to go. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's intimate, and it's also it's engaging the people who support your music to help you grow your community. So, and I think that there's real value in that. When somebody partners with you as an artist, they feel like they're invested. We all want to be part of things that are bigger than ourselves, right? And so I think that when people are involved in this way with you in this partnership, it's a really great experience for them. And I think that as an artist, it's great for me because I'm getting to play in front of a whole new group of people every night. This is not people that I've played for 5 times before. This is a whole new batch. We're like, essentially at every house we go to, we're creating a new little market. We're not tapping the same market over and over again. We're creating new little markets. So like when I go to Seattle, for instance, we started out doing, maybe 2 or 3 house concerts in the Seattle area. It's grown now, and I do like 8 house concerts in the Seattle area. But it doesn't matter. You would never play 8 club shows in a row in 1 week in Seattle. You would be, like tapping your audience too much. But with the house concerts, it's a different little market in every little house. So that's pretty cool.
That's very cool. So we're starting to get some questions, and I want to kind of break it into 2 parts for now. Let's spend a little time talking about the event itself. And,
okay.
The $64,000 question that everyone has on their minds is, how do you make money doing this? What is your model? Because it's different than what I've seen some other people do, and it's been effective for you. So let's talk about, you show up at a host's house and you're performing and you're working the room and you're making friends. Talk about sort of how you go about doing that, and what do you do to turn that into a financially viable event?
Okay, so we do all of our house concerts. I should say the vast majority, 95% of our house concerts are done on a donation basis. We call it an open donation basis, meaning that the guests, when they're invited to come to the show, are told that it's going to be a donation-based event. Please come prepared to make a donation to the artist at the conclusion of the show. We specifically ask our hosts not to suggest a donation amount. We tell them just to make it an open donation. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, if there's somebody on the guest list that maybe just lost their job, or they're in lean times, and if the invitation said we suggest a $20 donation to come to the show, they're not going to show up. Some people don't have that kind of cash to spend on entertainment. But I still want that person there, because as an artist, if I can make a connection with them with the music, that's the most important thing anyway, right? That's why we do what we do. But secondly, if I can make a deep connection with them with the music, they'll become a fan. The next time I come through, they'll come and they'll be able to donate, and they'll buy my next album, and they'll wear my t-shirt proudly. So we don't want there to be a barrier to entry for people to come. So that's one of the reasons we don't suggest a donation. But the flip side of that is that another reason we don't suggest a donation amount is that if you tell somebody that this show is worth $15, they won't put in $20. If you tell them it's worth $20, they won't put in $50. And I'm telling you this because the very first house concert that we did, that one in San Diego I told you about, we did not have a suggested donation. It was just open. At the end of the night, there was a $100 bill in that vase. And I think if somebody had been told this was a $10 show, they might not have done that. And so I think that on the other end of things, people who are doing well, if they're really moved, if they really feel like this was a valuable experience to them, then we want to give them the opportunity to express that as generously as they want to or as they can. So that's the donation basis. Now, since we're doing all these shows on a donation basis, it's a bit of a trust fall. I mean, every single show, that icebreaker game you used to do in junior high where like you had your friends stand behind you and you had to like fall backwards into their arms. That's kind of what I feel like a house concert is every night. That said, we have learned over the course of the last 3 years the little details that when you put them all together add up to your best chance for success. And so that's where we get into, things like specifically how to set up the space, specifically what kind of language to put in the invitations, specifically how you coach the host into making the donation announcement. I mean, like fine-tuned little details, and we can walk through those step by step if you'd like to, in terms of like some of those details. If you'd like to hit some of those, Dave.
Yeah, let's do that. Please
okay.
Go ahead.
So starting, a good house concert starts with preparation. So before you even are on your way to the house, it's incumbent on me to prepare my host to be a good host, to make a successful show. And so, I help them from the beginning, from putting together their guest list. Okay, if you're aiming for 20 people to come, you should invite 40. We have discovered over our experience in doing this that about half the people who are invited tend to show up. So invite double the number of people that you would like to see at the actual concert. Secondly, in invitations, we ask the hosts to always ask for an RSVP, because we found that when people are required to say, yes, I'll be there, they're much more likely to actually show up than if it's like, oh, hey, come by, we're doing this thing, we'd love to see you. When people have to say they're going to be there, they're more likely to actually show up. And it also puts in their mind, this is an event that I have said I'm going to go to. It's a special thing. It's not just a hangout at my friend's house. So we're starting the psychology of the house concert concept, right? But with the invitation. So then, leading up to the show, I give all of our hosts specific invitation language so that they can communicate early to all of the guests exactly, like that it's going to be a donation-based concert. If there's any specific things they need to know about the setup, we put that all in the invitation. So we help the host as we plan. The day of the show is also super important, and what we do, like the setup, for instance, is a really important aspect. We touched on this briefly earlier, but when we set up a house concert, it's important for us that everybody needs to have a seat. This is not like standing around listening to music. So and that doesn't mean that the host has to have 20 chairs either. It just means that people need to be focused during the concert time in the area. So maybe like blankets on the grass in the backyard, or pillows on the floor in a packed living room. Those are all options. But the idea is that we set up a space so that it's very clear when the guests walk in the door, they say, oh, okay, there's the food and drinks hanging out over here, and that's obviously the concert area. That's where we're going to be going to listen to music, so that it's set up before anyone even comes and see that's where the concert's going to be. We leave time in the schedule. We have a very sort of strict schedule that we follow at a house concert that leaves time for the talking, the hanging out, that kind of thing, and then carves out the time for the concert. So we always show up at the host's house an hour before guests are asked to arrive. And that's, do the sound setup and sound check, set up the merch, have a moment to just get to know the host, chit-chat a bit. We also use part of that time to coach them on their donation announcement, which I'll get to in a minute. But that's sort of the pre-show prep. The first hour then, so let's say that the concert's going to start at 8. All the guests have been invited to come at 7. So from 7 to 8 is hangout time. And it's really important to have that time for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's nice for people to be able to come and get comfortable, have a drink, talk with their friends, just kind of like ease into the space a little bit. It's also great for latecomers. So if you're not, if you say come at 7, concert's at 7, inevitably 20 minutes later someone's going to be coming stumbling in and interrupting your concert, right? So it gives us sort of a buffer time for that. And thirdly, it gives you an opportunity to start making connections with people before you even play. So by the time you get up to play, you're not a stranger to the crowd. Right. You're the guy who's been sitting there asking people about their job, or oh hey, where did you travel on your vacation this summer. You've already gotten to know them. You've started the connection so that by the time you do concert time, they already feel like they know you. They're on your side.
Right.
and they're rooting for you. So like you've gotten a leg up, because you've had that connection time beforehand. And then we always do like a 5-minute warning. And one thing we did that was new this last summer that actually we'll be putting it in an updated version of my book. This book. We did a program, like a handbill type thing, so that 5 minutes before the show, we went around and said, "Here's your program for the show," and it was great. It had a little miniature bio. It had places where they could contact me on social media and email. Just a little thing to have in their hand. And this also serves as your 5-minute warning for music. So go refill your drink, use the bathroom, and then find a seat for the concert. Because we're all about, constructing this unique, exclusive, connective, intimate concert feel, right? So 5-minute warning and then music time. And we start promptly, as promptly as we can. And my show usually runs for about an hour, maybe a little over. And we let them know that it's going to be about an hour-long experience, so that they know exactly what they're in for. And then afterwards, we do more hanging out. The donation, am I just rambling? Should I keep going? Do you want to interject with anything? I mean, I could go on and on.
No, I think you keep going, because this is what a lot of people have come to hear.
Great, okay. So the donations. You asked how we make the money, and this is where it all happens. All the little details that we've planned for lead up to the donation announcement. And this is done in our model by the host. And we let them know this before we even book a show with somebody, that they are going to be the ones making the announcement at the conclusion of the show to ask for donations, just so that you're clear from the get-go, because people can get funny about money, or people can get funny about asking for money. But if you are able to communicate that expectation, I guess, clearly from the beginning, they know what's required of them, and everybody's usually cool with it. So what we do for the donations is this. As my last note is still ringing in the air at the end of the concert, the host comes up and stands next to me and says something like this: "Thank you, Shannon, so much for this incredible experience. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. Let's show her our generosity. If you remember, this is a donation-based concert. I'm going to leave this vessel right here on Shannon's keyboard. Please come up and be as generous as you can be to show her our appreciation for this." And then we all walk away. I walk away to the merch table. But we leave that vessel there so that people can come and just take care of that as they will, with no pressure. It's not like church. We're not passing the hat, and also an important thing is that you notice we do the donations at the end of the show, not at the door on their way in. And the reason for that is this. What you do is basic fundraising 101, right? You show them the cool thing, and then you ask them for the money. So why would they be motivated to be very generous on their way in the door before they've even heard you sing, So
Yeah.
let them have the experience, and then let them show you how they appreciated that with their donation. So that's the donation announcement. Now, we call this the ask, right? In the book, we talk about it being the ask. And it's really important. Like, really, that donation announcement that your host makes can totally make or break the night. Like, if they get up there and they fumble and they say, please put some tips in here for gas money. Oh, man, that's like bad, really bad. We don't want the word tips. We don't want the word gas money. What we want is donations for a concert experience that people have just had. So we actually spend some time, I mentioned in that hour before guests arrive at the house concert. Jamie is actually the one who takes on this responsibility in our world, but he pulls the host aside, and we let them know that this is going to happen as we're planning the event, and he coaches them on that announcement, because they really need to understand the importance of it. I think that they know that as a musician, you're doing these concerts to try to earn your living, to grow your career. They want to be a part of that. I think that generally speaking, because they understand that, they're open to suggestions and open to hearing about why this is really important. So it's super important to have that conversation and to prepare them. So he specifically, Jamie, when he's talking to the hosts, specifically tells them, don't use the word tips, don't use the word gas money, and he explains why. This is how we make our living. This is how we're getting around on tour this summer and paying our bills at the same time. So we don't want crumpled up ones. We want 20s, And I think that it's important for the host to understand that. And so, in fact, one thing that we're going to do that I haven't done yet, but that I'm going to be doing in future house concerts, I'm going to come with a pre-printed cue card for all of our hosts, so that there's like a list of things, because a lot of times, you know, they've just experienced the concert. You know, maybe they were feeling emotional at the end of the show and got up and then just, you know, fumbled all their words. This way they'll have something, you know, or maybe they're nervous about speaking in front of people. This way they'll have a little something to cue off of to make sure that they hit the points that they need to hit. Because that really is, I mean, that can make or break your whole night, that speech. So we really work hard and spend a lot of time deliberately focusing on that before, when in the planning stages of things, and at the day of the show itself. And then after that, I head over to the merch table and we sell merch. And you know, having a good merch strategy is really, really important. We in the numbers. So the book that we wrote about this, which I'm holding up here, No Booker, No Bouncer, No Bartender: How I Made $25K on a 2-month house concert tour, and how you can too. These numbers here are based on the tour we did in 2013, and on that tour, the figure 25K comes from the fact that we averaged $500 a night over the course of 50 shows that summer, and that $500 a night was split between donations and merch. I think donations were about 55% of that, and merch was about 45% of that. So having a good merch strategy is really important in terms of your income. And so I talk a lot about that in the book as well. But you know, things that you, I'm sure, have heard before. But one of the main things is that's where you need to be as an artist at the end of the show, and it needs to be in a location where people are naturally going to progress after the show. Maybe, you know, it's, you know, in a maybe the show's outside and it's the table is near the door where they can go to the bathroom or go refill their drinks inside. You know, where people are going to naturally be, the flow of traffic is going to be. And also, I always make it visible from the performance area too, so that when I'm talking about it during the show, which you should be doing, if you're not, you should be talking about your merch during your show, I can point to it and say, I'm going to be hanging out at that merch table right over there after the show. Here's what's available. And they can look over and see, oh, there's the CDs. Oh, that T-shirt's really cute. I could see myself in that. And they can start thinking, you know, ahead of time about what they're going to go home with. You know, it's funny. This is sort of a tangent, a little bit of a tangent. We read so much these days about how people aren't buying CDs anymore. People aren't even downloading anymore. They're just streaming. You know, what's the music industry going to do? and I kind of chuckle when I read articles like that, and I know it's true, but I chuckle because we sell a lot of CDs on our house concert tours. What are the numbers from the 2013 tour? I think, let's see. Sorry to be flipping through my book. Yeah, in 2013, we sold 700 CDs. I think our numbers were definitely up this last summer. But, you know, we sell a lot of physical merch. And I think it's probably one of the reasons is that people have had this experience. And that's really the bottom line, is this is not a traditional venue experience. You've created this unique thing with people that many of them have never experienced before, and a lot of them just want to go home with something that represents that night, you know, that represents that feeling that they got in this really nifty, unique, connective experience that they've had. And so, so we sell a lot of merch. We're selling more CDs than we're supposed to be selling in this new music economy.
Well, you're looking at your CD as a form of merch, which I think is all right. So there's a lot of things that you just said that I just want to highlight for everybody and give you a chance to take a drink of water.
Thanks. I know I maybe I had too much coffee this morning.
So, you know, one of the things that we all talk about is the importance of engaging with your audience and creating a relationship with your audience. And what you're doing is almost the epitome of that. You're having this intimate experience with your audience where you're talking to them, with them before the show, which draws them in, and you're gathering your mailing list during the course of the show, and they're paying more attention to your songs, I'm sure, as a result.
Yep.
And as a lot of other artists have talked about, the importance of being at that merch table and interacting with people and signing stuff and helping them pick stuff out. What I see you doing is you're taking that philosophy all the way through the show. It's not just show up at the merch table at the end and, sign a few pictures and your fans will be happy. No, you're actually creating relationship with people throughout the show that draws them into the show, lets them experience your music on a more personal and intimate level, and then you're right there with the merch, and no wonder you sell so much stuff. I mean, there were questions about merch, so I'm glad that you got to that.
Great. Can I just highlight something that you just said and sort of like expand on it just a little bit? Because I think this is like really one of the most important things. And you use the word relationships. And I think that that is the crux of what makes this model work, not only for successful shows on an individual basis, but in terms of building blocks for a sustainable independent music career. I had to rethink a lot of things when we started doing house concerts because I thought that my career was supposed to go on this path where I get new fans and the relationship between me and the audience was this like, that I had to, that like as an artist you're supposed to like maintain this cool distance, right? Because you want adoring fans. And I had to completely break myself of that thinking when I saw the success of the house concert model, because what I was seeing was that what I was developing with these people was not a typical, or what I thought was a typical artist-fan relationship. In fact, I have started excising the word fan from my vocabulary because I don't feel that that accurately represents the relationship I have with people. What I have is a growing community. And I think that that is just a really important like shift in thinking for me, was when I began to understand that this was more than casual fan, that this was deeply invested community, and that the kind of deep connections that I'm able to make at a house concert, like you just described, for all those reasons that you just described, those are the kind of relationships that are going to sustain me as an artist for years to come. This is not a casual encounter. These are deep connections, and that is really, I think that's what this whole thing hangs on, is that that it's about partnership with your community. It's about building your community. It's about bringing something of value to that community in terms of your music and the experience that you're bringing, and allowing them to contribute back to you as part of the community, oftentimes in a financial way, as you're in terms of the tours that you're doing and the house concerts that you're doing. So I think that's a really important thing to get.
I think it's really important. It's critical. So we've got a lot of questions coming in, and I know Chelsea is queuing a bunch up, and I have a bunch written down. You've already answered a few.
Cool.
A theme that we're getting is, okay, now you've talked about the event itself and how you set up the event and what happens during those hours when you're there. Talk a bit about setting up a whole tour.
Okay, great.
How far in advance do you plan it? How many stops do you make? How big is the territory? What are your expectations? How do you communicate with the host? Talk about all of that, if you will.
Okay, will do. So in my case, I put out the word for, we've been doing a summer house concert tour the last 3 summers, which starts sometime in the middle of June and goes, well, it's been varying lengths of time. 2012 was 35 shows. 2013 was 50 shows. This past summer it was 60 shows. And we went to Canada for the first time this last summer, and all over the United States, so east to west coast and everywhere in between. But I put the word out like late March, early April. Okay, we're planning the summer house concert tour. Who would like to host a show? And now, obviously, at this point, we've been doing this for 3 years, and so people who know me have been following along. They get what we're doing. So I've got the advantage at this point of not having to explain this weird thing that I'm doing with people. They've seen my Instagram posts for the last 3 years of these house concerts that we're doing. They've followed along on Facebook. So it's become kind of an entity that I think people want to get involved in, right? So I put the word out in I guess it's like 3 months in advance of when we were going to start the tour. And in terms of like where we go on the tour, I have a sort of a saying that I like to say with regard to that, in that, and it's that I don't choose the tour chooses me. In that means that I will go where there are hosts who want me to come and play. So I don't pick the cities that I want to go to. Okay, I want to hit Chicago and Philadelphia and New York, and now let's find hosts. It's the other way around. I ask for hosts and where they would like for us to come, and that's where the tour takes us. If there are enough hosts in a region of the country where, mathematically speaking, it would make sense for us to drive there, and we think that we could earn enough money while we're in that region to go, then we will make the trip. And that has meant that the last 2 summers we've gotten to go all over the U.S., West Coast to East Coast, and pretty much everywhere in between. So the cool thing about it, though, is that we end up in some really out-of-the-way places. And like last summer in 2013, I had someone in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, who wanted to host a show. Have you ever heard of Pottstown, Pennsylvania?
No.
I didn't think so. But we went to Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and did a show. It's a place I would have ended up going on my own, but somebody wanted to host us there, and we had enough other shows in the region to make it make sense, and so we went. Well, guess what? This last summer, we did 3 shows in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, at 3 different houses, because there were 2 people at that one house who were like, hey, come to my house next year. And so we got to see sort of that viral thing happening. If we had decided that we were, where we were going in advance, we would have missed Pottstown. I certainly wouldn't have picked it off of a map, So I go where people would like to have us go. And the way that it's kind of crazy to organize all this, actually, because, like I said, this last year we did 60 shows all over the U.S. I also do not plan out the route and then ask people to host then. What I do is I ask who's interested in hosting a show and let them know the tour is going to happen from June through September, roughly, in that time frame somewhere. When are they unavailable in those months? So if they have a wedding they have to go to, a vacation planned, a weekly commitment that they are unavailable on Tuesday nights for whatever reason, I ask them for that information, and then I take that information, and it's like a 4-dimensional math problem. I put on a big pot of coffee and I open a Google map and my calendar, and I figure out what the route is going to look like based on my host's availability, not based on where I want to go, but where they're available and when they're available. And so that's how the route gets drawn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so what you're describing is sort of the ultimate audience-driven
Totally.
tour.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's your music business 101. It sounds simple, but I know it's very complex, and that you worked really, really hard to come up with this model, and a bit of trial and error. And you and Jamie do the whole thing? 2 of you?
Yeah, just the 2 of us.
That's really great. So I'm gonna get to a few questions that I have, and then rely on Chelsea to send me some of the ones that she's been queuing up. So one of the things that I would say is very important for everybody to appreciate here is this whole notion of creating and monetizing experiences for your audience is a very deep vein of how you can make money in the music business today. Mm-hmm. And this is a very, very clear example of creating a valuable experience that gives you deep connections with your audience that you can monetize, and you've proven that you can do it. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the totality of ways of making money, creating experiences for your audience that you can monetize is really one of the main paths left for us in this business, and you're personifying what this is all about. So do you ask, is there an expectation of a donation in the communication that the host makes to their guests that they're inviting prior to you showing up and prior to them showing up?
So we never ask for a suggested donation amount. But we do ask all of our hosts to specifically put in their invitations to their guests these exact words, and I will quote myself here. This is a donation-based concert. Please come prepared to make a donation to the artist at the conclusion of the show. So that's it. We do communicate that it is going to be a donation-based concert, and that they are going to be asked to donate for the experience, but we do not set a suggested amount. And I talked about that earlier, right? That we don't want people to not come because they're scared of the too high of a suggested donation. We want them to come and become connected with the music, right? That's going to benefit me financially in the long run. If that poor person who couldn't come, based on a $20 donation, I still want them to come and become part of the community. And then also on the upward side, we don't limit people's expression of generosity if they would like to be more generous. And it happens. It totally happens, all the time. So yeah, does that answer the question, I think?
Yep, it did. Thank you. Another, Chris asked, I'm just going in chronological order here of questions that I picked up.
Cool.
Chris asked, is there any guarantee? Is the host providing any guarantee in terms of number of people, or what's the burden on the host ahead of time? And when you walk into a situation, what are your expectations? What's sort of that perception of what do you expect when you get there?
Sure. Okay. So before I will even book a show with somebody, I let them know that for it to be a successful event for me, that I need for them to have a minimum number of 20 adults present. And so I actually have a list of questions. I send everybody, all my potential hosts, the Shannon Curtis House Concert Guide. It's like a 7-page PDF of all the sort of expectations that I have of them as hosts, and explanations as to why those are my expectations, as to why we need those things to make the event work. And at the end of that PDF, I actually have a list of questions that I require them to answer actively before I will book a show with them. And one of the questions is, do you think you can get a minimum number of 20 adults to come to this event? How many people do you expect? So it's very, very clear before I even put a date on the calendar with somebody that that's the expectation. Now, that said, we show up to some shows and there are 12 people there. I've showed up to some shows and there have been 6 people there. And it happens. It still happens to me, even though I've had several now really successful full-on house concert tours. I will show up to some shows and there will be very few people there. And you know what? You show up and you play like you're playing to a packed house, and you give it your all, because every single opportunity to connect with people, even if there are 6 people there, is an opportunity for growth. I've done shows for 6 people where someone in that audience has hosted a show the following summer and had 30 people. And they wouldn't have been introduced to the concept had they not been there, had I not given them the full experience while we were there. It's an opportunity every show, even if it's less than you expected, less than you planned, even if the host dropped the ball, it's still an opportunity to make connections with the people who are there for future opportunities.
Got it.
Yeah.
A few people have asked a question, are we going to share the PDF? I just played the whole PDF while Shannon was talking about setting up the tour.
Well, you know what? Actually, can I interject? The PDF that you have is sort of my house concert presentation.
Yeah.
I share my house concert guide with anyone who'd like, and we actually I think I sent you the link. Oh wait, you know what? I sent you the link to the community. We just yesterday launched an online message forum for artists who are doing house concerts or learning how to do house concerts. A place for us to sort of ask questions, share ideas, and one of the things on that forum is a link to my last summer's house concert guide, so that I have that 7-page PDF linked in the forum. So if you go to shannoncurtis.net/community.
Yeah, we just posted it.
Oh, great. There you go. So if you go there, you'll see all of the different forum topics, and there's one that's labeled resources, and you'll find the PDF there. So feel free to read it, use it as inspiration. I just ask that you don't copy and paste from it. but use what you can to be inspired.
All the secrets. Alexa asks, how long is your set? Is it a set length? Is there a formula to how long these shows are?
So, I know my audience, and I know for me what works is my set is usually just a little bit over an hour. So, I think this last summer it was running at like 1 hour, 7 minutes or something like that. And I play the same set every night with, all the banter is the same, all the stories are the same every single night. That's just what works for me. But yes, I play for an hour. For me, that's a sweet spot. That is long enough to give people an experience of a show, but not so long that I'm testing the outer boundaries of their attention spans. And there's that max that saying in showbiz that you want to leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Like, I love it when I have a crowd's attention and that they're paying attention, but I don't want to wear out my welcome. I would like for the experience to end before they are fully satisfied, because I want them to come back for more the next time.
All right, good advice. Okay, another question. Have you had any bad experiences that you'd want to share with us? Any security issues? Anything that you would share with us that people should try and avoid when they're trying to do this?
Yes, I've had bad experiences. Never anything where I felt like my safety was compromised. And I think that probably one reason for that is that I'm in such deep communication with all of my hosts in advance of the show that I very quickly am able to get a vibe whether or not this is a good situation or not, because I'm talking with them quite a bit in preparation for the tour. So I've never been in a circumstance where I felt like unsafe. Also, I'm traveling with my husband all the time, and I know that's a clear benefit. I've done a lot of touring by myself as a single woman. I've done laps around the country in my Volkswagen Jetta by myself, and I understand, that need for really being vigilant about one's safety. And when you're going to someone's home, there's an added, layer to that. So I know that I have a benefit in traveling with somebody, but I've never felt like our safety has been compromised. But what was the previous question was, crap, what was it that you just said? It was safety, but also, bad experience. Yes, I've had bad experiences. The bad experience that I've had are very few and far between, honestly. Very few. But when you have them, it can be difficult. Like we showed up to a show a couple summers ago in Oakland, California, and there were 4 people in a dingy garage in a very bad part of town. And I sat there and I played my heart out for those 4 people, and Jamie and I left there, and we were so discouraged. Like, we seriously had the conversation, like, maybe we should just hang all this up and get day jobs. And, we really, it had a moment where it took a toll. Of course, the next night we showed up, and it was a beautiful show at somebody's house, and, our faith was restored. It can be hard. It's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to put yourself out there as a performer to begin with. Putting yourself out there as a performer in somebody's home, in the confined space of a living room, where you can see everybody's faces well lit, and that's a vulnerable position, and it can be scary, but honestly, I believe that element of a house concert is where the power in it lies. Mm-hmm. The fact that it is a vulnerable position, that so you can really use that, I think, to your advantage. Even if there's 4 people in a dingy garage, it'll happen. And I hope to not repeat that particular, circumstance, but they're few and far between, so we're grateful.
What's the biggest room in a house concert context that you played? So,
we've done shows, in people's houses. A lot of times, since we do most of our touring in the summertime, a lot of shows end up being in people's backyards because there's more space usually for people to gather. So we've done, some outdoor shows for 75, 85, 90 people. sometimes in these larger backyard spaces. That said, there have been some shows too. Like there was a show a couple years ago where our host really wanted to kind of blow it up, and even though we didn't require it of them, they wanted to rent out a small theater in their town in Kansas, and so they invited 200 people, and it was great. I mean, it was really awesome. It was still the house concert idea, but it was in an alternative location that this particular host just wanted to go for it, But normally, obviously, we want people to do it in spaces where it doesn't cost them any money to host it. We want it to be accessible to anyone to be able to do.
So, do you see? You may have a strong reaction to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure.
Because I got a lot of emails this week from people who signed up for the webinar, and one of the questions that I've got is, do you see a scenario where the host is able to charge at the door and do some sort of a split with you? This is around the question of what's in it for the host. There's been a discussion the last week or so about touring costs. Jack Conte from Pamplemousse put out a piece that I know you've seen, and there's been some other posts around that of how hosts have actually lost money doing house concerts, and if you do it once, it's okay, but if you're doing it on a more regular basis, what are your thoughts about monetizing the door? And does that break your model, or is that something that could allow you to scale?
I guess I could say that it's not something that I'm currently interested in doing, because the donation model seems to be working very well for us. It keeps it, the feel of it seems to be less about consumerism and more about community, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so, giving a donation for an experience is different than buying a ticket for a show. And so on that level, it's a different scenario. The what's in it for the host question is a great question. I know that there are people out there who are great supporters of independent music, who host, regular house concerts in their homes, and God bless them. I mean, that's wonderful. The people that I'm doing my shows with are not generally those people. In fact, I don't think that any of our hosts have ever hosted another house concert before or since. I think that most of the people that we're working with are people who are supporters of my music. They aren't people who host house concerts. They're regular Joes that support what I'm doing and want to introduce me to their community and their friends. And so in terms of what's in it for them, I suppose we should ask my hosts, for some quotes directly from them. What's in it for you? Why do you keep having us back summer after summer? I think that probably what they would say is that what's in it for them is that they get to be a part of sharing something really unique and special with their community. And I know that sounds really hippy-dippy, but it's just true. I think that people really value the experience, and they value being a part of something that I'm doing, that we're doing together, that the value in the event itself is just intrinsic to the experience that we're having together. It's not a monetary exchange, So I would not at this point probably entertain the idea of doing a house concert where there's a split of the door with the host. It just doesn't seem to jibe at all with where I'm at. And that's not to say that that's not a perfectly fine thing to do. It's just not where I'm at.
Sure. Well, that's a good, honest answer.
Sure.
So I want to ask a little more. I mean, you have a very lean and mean operation. It's you performing with a small PA and a keyboard, and Jamie's just shared your PA system on the chat if anybody's interested.
Great.
So a couple questions. What would you say to people who have a 4 or 5 piece band trying to use your model? And can this model work if you've got to fly somewhere instead of driving?
Gosh, so I've had conversations with people who are in 4 or 5 piece bands. There's actually a band here in LA who I've met with a couple times who they read the book and they've done their first house concert tour based on this model as their 4-piece acoustic band. They had a great experience. I think that they're still learning some things about how it's going to work for them. But they're encouraged. So, I mean, I have not done this personally as a 4 or 5 piece band, but from their experience that I've heard, it was a positive experience. So I think, yeah, I mean, everybody's going to have a different situation, a different scenario, right? So I think that you're going to have to do some tweaking based on your own needs and your own situation. But yeah, I think it's possible to do. In terms of flying, sure. I mean, if it's you and a guitar, it's easy to fly. It's a pain in the butt to fly with my keyboard. So, I try not to do that kind of thing. You would probably, like with any touring, it's only going to make sense for you to travel far and pay, pay for a plane ticket or pay for all the gas to get out to a certain region if you have enough shows in that region to make it make sense, So I would say do a conservative projection of what you think you can earn at each show and how many shows do you have, and do a budget and then figure out if it's going to work for you.
Okay, great. So a couple questions about hosts. Aaron on the chat is just inviting the 2 of you to come to Niagara region of Canada to do a show. So
awesome!
Questions from people around hosts. How do they find hosts? What if their mailing list is not that big? Also, how do you convince a host that it's going to be a good thing for them and they're going to be safe, their house isn't going to get trashed?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, on that last question, their house isn't going to get trashed. The key point is that they're going to be inviting their friends to come. So if their friends trash their house, then maybe they need new friends. But it's not like you're going to be inviting strangers into their house. So that's an important thing. And, yeah, if you're starting out with not a very big mailing list, I think that starting with what you have, you start with what you have. And I think that at the beginning, for me, I had to really paint a picture of what this could look like, because this is a foreign concept to most people. Most people that we do house concerts with, the vast majority, have never experienced anything like it before and have never even been aware that this was a thing that people could do. Like it's a completely new concept. So at first, I had to really paint the picture. I had to be like, here's what it would look like, and here's why it's going to be awesome. Like, it's the most connective, intimate experience, like it's unique, it's exclusive. Do what you can to paint the picture of why it's going to be so cool. Get those first few people on board to host, even if you start with a small little group, and then document it like crazy. One of the things we did when we first started doing them was document them like crazy. We took pictures of the setup and took pictures of ourselves with the host and videos of the show, and we blew it up on social media, because then you start to paint a picture with actual images of actual events that have happened, and people start to get the idea. And I think, like this last summer on our tour, we had some first-time hosts who've been watching for the last couple of years this thing that we're doing. And it's taken them a little while to get the idea, to get the picture. And so after a couple of years of watching, they're like, oh, I see what this house concert thing is. That's pretty cool, and I would like to do that in my backyard. Thank you very much. And so they finally got on board. So it might take a while to develop that excitement around it, but you can nurture it. Even if you start with your first show, with one show, you can start to paint a bigger picture for people. And I think that after a while, what we've discovered is that there's momentum that happens when you continue to nurture the story.
Okay, so this is, for the folks that ask those questions, this is not unlike, what you need to go through in a traditional gigging venture where you've got to convince the promoters that you're the real deal. Only here, you're not necessarily having to convince them that you can fill the room because your host is going to fill the room. That's a critical difference.
Yeah.
So here's another question for you, Shannon. Do you guys stay in hotels? Do you stay in a van? Do you stay with the host? What's that all about?
So we very often do stay with our hosts, and that's huge in terms of saving money on the road. And so, yes, when we're invited to stay with our hosts, we do that. We've now done enough of these tours over the last few years that we've developed great friendships with a lot of our hosts in cities, and so, you know, we've got people in Seattle that, you know, they give us their house key and say, stay here the entire time you're here, and we give them hugs and tell them I love you when we leave, you know. So there are places where we stay, you know, like that as well. But yeah, I think, and occasionally we do get hotels, and but I think it was very few. On this past summer's tour, we did 60 shows, and I think that we maybe stayed in a total of 10 hotels the whole summer, which saved us a lot of money. We've done a lot of touring over the years and have developed skills for getting the cheapest hotels possible also. So if you want to know more about like our Priceline and Hotwire tips for getting inexpensive hotels on the road, I'm happy to share that with you guys too. I think we're going to start we have a sub-forum on our house concert forum on my website that talks about travel tips too. So yeah, keeping your costs low is super important. I mean, we travel in a Volkswagen Jetta. You know, we cram as much stuff as we can in that little car, so we get, you know, pretty good gas mileage. Stay with the host as much as possible. Beautiful thing about house concerts is there's often food, so you are typically also eating at the place where you're performing, and you don't have to spend money on dinner. So that's nice too.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple other questions, and anybody that's got questions that we haven't asked yet, please type them in. We've got about 15 minutes to go here. So, you're building your user base as a result of this tour. You're building your email list. So I guess I have two parts to a question.
Okay.
That are coming from the chat. One
Right.
is, what do you do to monetize or develop your email list after and during the tour, primarily after? What do you do with your list? And do you ever connect your fans with a host? Do you do any, do you help the host at all? Or do you, I mean, what happens if you have 30 people in a town that you're going to? Do you let them know, or how does that work?
Okay, so what was the first part of the question was?
Let's take the second part. Do you connect your fans to the host?
Okay, so I do not do any proactive, hey guys, I'm coming to Kansas City. Who would like to come to this house concert we're doing? There's a couple reasons for that. One is that, you know, the relationship that I've developed with the host, they're inviting us into their home. It's a trusted sort of thing. I would not presume that I could just be inviting strangers into their home, you know, so that would be a sort of a breach of that trusted relationship, I think. Secondly, I think, you know, I have had people who have said, oh, hey, yeah, I can host a show for you in my town. Feel free to invite your fans in the area to come. And actually, in those cases, I will, if there are fans who say, hey, I see you're playing in my town, you know, can I come to this house concert? What I do is I always introduce the fan who wants to come to the host and let the host do the inviting. So I'm not inviting people to somebody's home. I'm letting the host still be the one to extend the invitation into their own home. And I think that, you know, even when people have said, yeah, you should invite your fans in the area, well, you know, you can promote the show and I'll just host it. I won't do the show with them unless they can tell me that they will have 20 of their own people coming, because that's just how we found that the model works. You know, that's just how it works best for us. So that's still a requirement, even if people say that they are open to people from the public coming to the show.
Okay, and so what do you do with your mailing list that you build?
Oh, right. So in terms of the mailing list, and going back to the conversation we had earlier about this being about relationships, we tour mostly just in summertime, but there's the other 9 months of the year that's not summertime, where it's up to me to nurture those relationships. And so I send out regular newsletters. At the end of the summer this year, we put out a music video at the end of the summer this year that featured clips that I filmed of people at house concerts all summer long. The song is called Hooray for Love, and we had people showing love to each other. And so put together this, video of all of them. So it's something I could shoot out to my mailing list when we edited it at the end of the summer, But following up with new content, here's a new song I've worked on. Here's a live recording I did in my house, a YouTube video of it. But just nurturing the relationship. So continuing to, give them, I hate the word content, but, to give them, updated content, things that I'm doing throughout the year, just to continue the story, because I don't want to go off the map for the fall, winter, and spring months. I need to continue to nurture the relationships. And that's true on social media, too. Jamie and I are both really good at, when we meet people at house concerts, hey, friend me on Facebook, and we actually nurture those relationships. It's not a passive thing where we're just posting. We're actually going on people's pages and liking and commenting things and nurturing relationships that work, right? Nurture those throughout the.
Okay. You mentioned in your slides, and you've talked a little bit in your presentation about adults only at the shows. We have a bunch of people in the program, in the New Artist Model program, and on this chat that have a younger demographic to their audience. So
Sure.
What would you suggest for those folks?
Younger meaning like teenagers or
Yeah, teens.
If teenagers have money to spend on stuff, then that can be viable. I don't know how it breaks down financially.
So when you say adults only, you mean no really young children, but you don't have an age cutoff or anything like that?
Yeah, nothing like that. So when we tell people adults only, what I mean is in my house concert line, are you hearing that feedback?
A little bit, yeah. It started about 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's going on there, but so we tell people that if they have children, like young kids who are running around during the show, or not able to sit still during the show, those are the kind of kids that don't qualify really. Teenagers, they're welcome to be able to go, but we actually ask that if somebody generally speaking, under, who aren't going to be able to sit quietly for a concert for an hour, that if they're there, they're taken to a different, room of the house where they're sonically separated from the concert, or taken to a neighbor's house or something like that, just the concert part of the show. But we don't want the kind of, again, the house concerts want to minimize distractions that could get in the way of people making that deep connection with your music, because the bottom line is if they don't connect, they're not going to donate. So and they're not going to participate in the way that you want them to. So does that answer the question about the adults versus kids?
Yeah, and I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up. We're getting an echo, and unless you've got a quick fix on your end, I think this has been just an absolutely wonderful webinar. Thank you so much for all of your insight and for sharing this with everybody. We all really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for coming and attending the event. There'll be a replay of this webinar that you'll all get an email for, and you can check Shannon out at shannoncurtis.net, and she's got a lot more stuff to share with you there. And Her book is available on Amazon. I'm going to pop that up one more time.
Awesome.
Just click through to Amazon and you can get the book. I think it's $4 or $5. Just incredible. Thank you so much, Shannon. Really, really appreciate your time, and the best of luck with everything. I know the summer's over and now you're into a different season, but I'll see you sometime soon in Los Angeles, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
And thanks everybody for coming. Be good. Take care.